Noah Price sat across from a woman in a wheelchair, and the cafe went silent in that cruel, performative way that made strangers feel like heroes just for not staring. Eva Lane looked him dead in the eye and said, "You don't have to stay if this is pity." He should have run. Most men did. Instead, he pulled out the chair and sat down like he was choosing her, not the situation. What happened next would prove that love isn't about fixing broken things. It's about having the courage to sit in the mess and stay anyway. If you're ready to hear a story about two people who refuse to perform for anyone's comfort, stick around until the end. And hey, drop a like and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The text came at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, while Noah Price was finishing his second cup of coffee and staring at a stack of lumber invoices that made his eyes hurt. Dude. Blind date. Tonight. No excuses. Noah read it twice, then set the phone face down on the counter like it might explode. His coworker Marcus had been on this campaign for 3 weeks now, ever since Noah had made the mistake of mentioning he hadn't been on a date in 8 months. Marcus took that as a personal challenge, like Noah's quiet life was some kind of emergency that required immediate intervention. The problem was, Marcus didn't take no for an answer. By lunchtime, Noah had received 4 more texts, each one more insistent than the last. By 3 p.m., Marcus was standing at his workstation with his arms crossed and that look on his face. The one that said he'd already made plans and wasn't about to let Noah weasel out of them. "It's just coffee," Marcus said, like that made it simple. 1 hour. If it's terrible, you leave. If it's great, you thank me forever. Noah looked up from the 2x4 he was measuring. "And if I say no, then I'll assume you're planning to die alone in that apartment with nothing but power tools and regret." Noah almost smiled. Almost. That doesn't sound so bad. Dude. Marcus leaned against the sawhorse, his voice dropping into something more serious. "I'm not saying you have to marry the woman. I'm saying you've been walking around like a ghost for months. And maybe, just maybe, you need to remember what it's like to sit across from someone and have a conversation that isn't about plywood grades." Noah didn't answer right away. He finished his measurement, marked the cut line with a pencil, then straightened and met Marcus's eyes. "What's her name?" "Eva. Eva Lane. She's a friend of my girlfriend's. Illustrator. Works from home. Smart as hell. Funny. Doesn't take crap from anyone." Marcus paused, then added carefully, "She uses a wheelchair." Noah frowned. "Why are you telling me that?" "Because I don't want you to be weird about it." "I'm not going to be weird about it." "Good. Then you'll go." Noah exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that felt like surrender. "Fine. 1 hour." Marcus grinned like he'd just won the lottery. 7 o'clock. That cafe on Hawthorne with the big windows, the one that does the lavender lattes. "I hate lavender lattes." "Then get regular coffee, man." "Jesus." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder and walked off, whistling something obnoxious and victorious. Noah stood there for a long moment, staring at the pencil in his hand, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. The cafe was exactly the kind of place Noah usually avoided. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, chalkboard menus written in looping cursive that took 3 tries to decipher. It smelled like espresso and baked goods, and every table seemed occupied by someone with a laptop and an expression of deep, performative focus. Noah arrived at 6:55, because showing up early felt less awkward than showing up late. He ordered a black coffee from a barista with a nose ring and a shirt that said "locally annoyed," then turned to scan the room. That's when he saw her. She was sitting by the window, her back to the glass, her profile lit by the amber glow of the street lamp outside. Dark hair pulled into a loose bun, a gray sweater that looked soft enough to sleep in, and a sketchbook open on the table in front of her. Her left hand moved across the page in smooth, confident strokes, her right hand resting on the armrest of the wheelchair folded neatly beside her chair. Noah felt something shift in his chest, a strange, unnameable thing that wasn't quite fear and wasn't quite anticipation. It was more like recognition, though he couldn't explain what he was recognizing. He crossed the room slowly, his heartbeat doing something erratic and unhelpful. When he reached her table, she looked up, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Her eyes were dark and sharp, the kind of eyes that saw through bullshit in the first 3 seconds. She didn't smile right away. She just looked at him, really looked. And Noah had the sudden uncomfortable feeling that she was reading him the way he read blueprints, measuring angles and weak points before deciding if the structure would hold. "Noah?" she asked, and her voice was calm, almost careful. "Yeah." He cleared his throat. "Eva? That's me." She closed the sketchbook and set the pencil down, then folded her hands on the table. "You can sit, or you can leave. I won't be offended either way." Noah blinked. "Noah, why would I leave?" "Because most people do." She said it without bitterness, just as a fact. They see the chair, or they see the hand, and suddenly they remember they have somewhere else to be. So if that's you, let's skip the awkward part and call it now. Noah didn't move. He stood there, coffee in hand, feeling the weight of her words settle between them like a test he hadn't studied for. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. Eva's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or doubt. "You sure about that?" "Yeah." Noah pulled out the chair and sat down, setting his coffee on the table with more force than necessary. "I'm sure." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe hummed around them, conversations blending into white noise, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of spoons against ceramic. But their table felt like an island, separate and still. Finally, Eva leaned back in her chair and smiled, just a little. "Okay then, let's see if you mean it." Oktam. The first 15 minutes were brutal. Not because Eva was difficult, she wasn't, but because Noah had forgotten how to do this. How to sit across from someone and make words come out in the right order. He fumbled through questions about her work, her neighborhood, whether she liked the cafe, and every answer she gave felt sharper and more interesting than anything he could think to say in return. "I illustrate children's books," she said, stirring her tea with her left hand, the motion smooth and practiced. "Mostly animals doing human things, bears in business suits, rabbits solving crimes, that kind of thing." "That sounds amazing," Noah said, and meant it. "It's fine. Pays the bills. Keeps me from having to deal with people most of the time, which is a bonus." She took a sip of her tea, her eyes never leaving his. "What about you? Marcus said you build things." "Framing carpenter. I work on residential construction mostly, houses, additions, that kind of thing." "So you make things that last." Noah hadn't thought of it that way before, but it felt true. "I guess so." "That's good work." She set her cup down, and her gaze softened just slightly. "Most people spend their whole lives making things that don't matter. At least you're building something real." Noah didn't know what to say to that. He took a drink of his coffee, which had gone lukewarm, and tried to think of something clever or insightful. Instead, he said, "Marcus made me come tonight." Eva laughed, an actual laugh, bright and unexpected. "Same. Jenna's been on my case for weeks. She thinks I'm becoming a hermit." "Are you?" "Absolutely." She grinned. "But I'm a very productive hermit. I get a lot of drawing done." "Then why'd you agree to this?" Her smile faded just a little, and she looked down at her hands. "Because sometimes it's easier to say yes than to explain why you want to say no." Noah understood that more than he wanted to admit. He nodded, and the silence between them shifted, less awkward now, more like an agreement. "Can I ask you something?" Eva said after a moment. "Yeah." "Why didn't you leave?" Noah frowned. "You already asked me that." "No, I asked if you were going to leave. I'm asking why you didn't." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking onto his. "Most guys, when they see the chair or when I tell them about the hand, they get this look, like they're doing math in their heads, figuring out if I'm worth the trouble. You didn't do that, so I'm asking why." Noah thought about it, really thought about it. He could have said something easy, something polite, but Eva didn't seem like the kind of person who wanted easy. "Because it doesn't matter," he said finally. "What doesn't?" "The chair, your hand, whatever happened." He met her eyes, steady and sure. "I came here to meet you, not to evaluate your body like it's a contractor estimate. So, yeah, I saw the chair, and I don't care." Eva stared at him for a long moment, and Noah couldn't tell if he'd said the right thing or the worst possible thing. Then, Slowly, her expression softened, and she smiled, really smiled, the kind of smile that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." They stayed at the cafe for 2 more hours. They talked about everything and nothing, her favorite books, his least favorite building project, the ridiculous names people gave their pets, the best kind of weather for doing absolutely nothing. Eva was funny in a way that snuck up on you, dry and sharp and perfectly timed. Noah found himself laughing more than he had in months, and somewhere along the way, he stopped worrying about what to say next. When the barista started wiping down tables and flipping chairs onto tabletops, Eva glanced at the clock and sighed. "I think they're kicking us out." "Probably." Noah stood and grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. "Can I walk you out?" "Sure." She reached for her wheelchair, unfolded it with practiced ease, and transferred from the chair to the seat in one smooth motion. Noah watched without staring, the same way he'd watch someone tie their shoes. Just a thing people did, nothing more. Outside, the air was cool and damp, the kind of Portland evening that hinted at rain but hadn't committed yet. Eva wheeled toward the curb where a small, accessible van was parked under a street lamp. "This is me," she said, stopping beside the driver's door. Noah nodded. "Thanks for tonight. I had a good time." "Me too." She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "You want to do it again?" Noah felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Yeah, I do." "Good. Saturday morning. There's a park near my place with a decent path. Bring coffee or tea. Whatever." She pulled out her phone and handed it to him. "Put your number in." He did, his fingers clumsy on the screen. When he handed it back, she grinned. "I'll text you the address. Don't be late." "I won't." She opened the van door and transferred into the driver's seat, stowing the wheelchair in the back with the kind of efficiency that came from doing it 1,000 times. Then she rolled down the window and leaned out, her smile crooked and warm. "Hey, Noah." "Yeah?" "Thanks for staying." Before he could answer, she rolled up the window and pulled away from the curb, the van's taillights disappearing into the drizzle. Noah stood there for a long time, hands in his pockets, watching the street and feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Saturday came faster than Noah expected. He woke up early, too early, and spent an hour staring at his closet like the fate of the world depended on whether he wore the blue flannel or the gray one. Eventually, he settled on gray, pulled on his work boots, and headed out into the cool morning air. The park was a 10-minute drive from his apartment, a quiet, tree-lined space with a paved path that looped around a small pond. Eva was already there when he arrived, sitting on a bench near the water with a sketchbook in her lap. She was wearing jeans and a faded green jacket, her hair pulled back into a ponytail. And when she saw him, she raised a hand in greeting. "You're late," she said as he approached. Noah checked his watch. "I'm 3 minutes early." "Exactly. I expected 5. She closed the sketchbook and set it aside, then gestured to the bench. "Sit. Did you bring the tea?" He held up the 2 iced peach teas he'd picked up from a cafe on the way. "As requested." "Perfect." She took one, popped the lid, and took a long drink. "God, that's good. Okay, you're forgiven." Noah sat down beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her presence, but not so close that it felt presumptuous. The pond stretched out in front of them, the surface glassy and still, reflecting the gray sky and the trees leaning over the water. "This is nice," he said. "It's my favorite spot." Eva set her tea on the bench and opened her sketchbook again, flipping to a half-finished drawing of the pond. "I come here when I need to think, or when I need to stop thinking. Depends on the day." Noah watched her work, the way her hand moved across the page with confidence and precision. The drawing was simple, but alive, loose, expressive lines that captured the curve of the water and the weight of the trees without overworking the details. "You're really good," he said. "Thanks. It's easier when the subject doesn't move." She glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "People are harder. They fidget." "I can sit still." "Can you?" "Try me." Eva studied him for a moment, then turned to a fresh page and started sketching. Noah stayed as still as he could, though it felt strange to be looked at so closely, Like every detail of his face was being cataloged and translated into lines and shadows. After a few minutes, she turned the sketchbook around. It was him, unmistakably him, but somehow softer than he thought of himself. The lines were gentle, almost kind, and the expression she'd captured made him look like someone worth knowing. "That's not me," he said quietly. "It's how I see you." She closed the sketchbook and set it aside. "You don't have to like it." "I do like it." He looked at her, feeling something shift between them, something warm and fragile. "I just don't know if I deserve it." Eva tilted her head, her eyes searching his. "Why would you say that?" "Because I don't know if I'm as good as that drawing makes me look. None of us are." She leaned back against the bench, her gaze drifting toward the water. "That's the whole point. We're all just trying to be better than we were yesterday. Some days we succeed, some days we don't." Noah didn't have an answer for that. He just nodded, and they sat in silence, the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. They met at the park 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. It became a rhythm, easy and unforced. Saturday mornings, iced tea, the bench by the pond. Sometimes Eva drew, sometimes she didn't. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they just sat and watched the water. Noah learned that she liked true crime podcasts and hated cilantro, that she'd grown up in Eugene and moved to Portland for college, that she'd been in a car accident 2 years ago and had spent 6 months learning how to live in a body that didn't work the way it used to. She told him this on their 4th meeting, her voice calm and matter-of-fact, like she was describing the weather. "Drunk driver," she said, staring at the pond. "Ran a red light. I was on my way home from a gallery opening. The doctors said I was lucky, could have been paralyzed from the neck down, could have died. But I lost most of the use of my right hand and both legs, so now I get to be the person people pity at parties." Noah didn't say anything right away. He didn't offer platitudes or try to fix it. He just sat there, letting her words settle between them. Finally, he said, "Do you hate it? The pity?" "Every single second." She turned to look at him, her eyes fierce. "I hate the way people stare. I hate the way they whisper. I hate the way they treat me like I'm brave just for existing, like getting out of bed in the morning makes me some kind of hero." "You're not brave for existing," Noah said quietly. "You're brave for being honest." Eva's expression softened just a little. "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." She looked at him for a long moment, then reached over and squeezed his hand, just once, quick and firm, before pulling away. "Thanks," she said, "for not being weird about it. I'm not going to be weird about it." "Good." She picked up her tea and took a long drink, her gaze drifting back to the water. "Because I really like these mornings, and I don't want to lose them." Noah smiled. "You won't." The outdoor concert was Eva's idea. "There's this thing at Laurelhurst Park," she said one Saturday morning, scrolling through her phone. "Local band, food trucks, the whole deal. You want to go?" Noah hesitated. He wasn't great with crowds, too much noise, too many people, too many chances for things to go wrong. But Eva was looking at him with that hopeful expression, and he found himself nodding before he could think better of it. "Sure. Sounds fun." "Liar." She grinned. "But I appreciate the effort." The concert was that evening, and Noah showed up at Eva's apartment at 6 to pick her up. She lived on the 2nd floor of an old brick building with a ramp out front and an elevator that groaned like it was on its last legs. When she opened the door, she was wearing a sundress and a denim jacket, her hair loose around her shoulders, and Noah forgot how to breathe for a second. "You clean up nice," she said, eyeing his button-down shirt. "You too." He cleared his throat. "You ready? Let's do it." The park was packed when they arrived, blankets spread across the grass, kids running in circles, the smell of grilled onions and fried dough thick in the air. The band was already playing, some indie folk group with a mandolin and a girl singing harmonies that made Noah's chest ache. They found a spot near the back, away from the densest part of the crowd, and Eva transferred from her wheelchair to a blanket Noah had brought. For a while it was perfect. The music was good, the evening was warm, and Eva was smiling in that unguarded way that made Noah feel like he'd won something he didn't know he'd been competing for. Then the whispers started. It was subtle at first, Just a few glances, a couple of people leaning toward each other and murmuring. But it built, the way these things always did, until Noah could feel the weight of a dozen eyes on them. A woman a few feet away said something to her friend, and the friend looked over and frowned, her expression a mix of pity and discomfort. Eva's smile faded. "I need to go," she said abruptly. "What?" Noah frowned. "Why?" I need to go. Now." She was already moving, transferring back into her chair with quick, jerky movements. "I'll see you later." "Eva, wait." But she was already wheeling away, weaving through the crowd with a speed that left Noah scrambling to catch up. By the time he reached the parking lot, she was already in her van, the engine running. "Ava, talk to me." He knocked on the window, his heart pounding. "What happened?" She didn't answer. She just stared straight ahead, her jaw tight, her hands gripping the wheel so hard her knuckles had gone white. "Please," Noah said, softer now. "Just tell me what I did wrong." Eva finally looked at him, and her eyes were wet. "You didn't do anything wrong. That's the problem." Before he could respond, she backed out of the parking space and drove away, leaving Noah standing alone under the streetlights, feeling like he'd just lost something he'd only just started to understand. 10 days passed, and Noah didn't hear from her. No texts, no calls, nothing. He told himself not to panic. He told himself she needed space, that whatever had happened at the concert wasn't about him. But the silence ate at him, hollowing him out in a way he hadn't felt since the worst days after his father died. On the 10th day, he couldn't take it anymore. He didn't call. He didn't text. Instead, he sat down at his kitchen table with a piece of sketch paper and a pencil, and he drew. He wasn't an artist, not like Eva, but he tried. He drew the bench by the pond, the way the trees leaned over the water, the outline of a figure sitting in the quiet morning light. At the bottom, he wrote, "I see you. Not the chair, not the hand. You." He folded the paper, drove to her apartment, and left it in her mailbox. Then he went home and waited. 2 days later, an envelope appeared in his mailbox. Inside was a drawing, clean, precise, unmistakably Eva's work. It was him, sitting on the bench, looking out at the water. And beneath it, in her careful handwriting, "I disappeared because I didn't believe I deserved someone who stayed. I'm sorry." Noah read it 3 times, then grabbed his keys and ran. The park looked different in the afternoon light, sharper somehow, less forgiving. Noah spotted Eva at their bench before she saw him, her wheelchair angled toward the water, her shoulders hunched forward like she was trying to make herself smaller. He slowed as he approached, his breath coming hard from the run, and when she finally turned to look at him, her eyes were red-rimmed and cautious. "You came," she said, and her voice cracked just slightly. "Of course I came." Noah stopped a few feet away, giving her space, giving himself room to think. "You sent me a drawing. What was I supposed to do?" "I don't know." She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting together in her lap. Most people would have taken the hint and moved on. I'm not most people. I'm starting to figure that out. She exhaled slowly, then gestured to the bench beside her. "Sit, please. I owe you an explanation." Noah sat, close enough to hear her breathe, but far enough that she didn't feel crowded. The pond stretched out in front of them, the same as it had been every Saturday morning, but everything felt different now. Heavier, more fragile. "I panicked," Eva said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "At the concert, I saw the way people were looking at us, and I couldn't handle it. I know that's not fair to you. I know you didn't deserve to be left standing there like that. But I couldn't breathe, Noah. I felt like I was drowning in their pity." "You don't have to explain." "Yes, I do." She turned to face him fully, and the raw honesty in her eyes made his chest ache. "Because if we're going to do this, whatever this is, you need to understand something about me. I'm not easy. I'm not uncomplicated. There are going to be days when the stares are too much, when I shut down and push you away, and I need to know if you can handle that." Noah thought about it, really thought about it. He could have said something reassuring, something that glossed over the hard parts. But Eva deserved better than that. "I don't know if I can handle it," he said honestly. But I want to try. Eva's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her face. That's not what I expected you to say. What did you expect? I don't know. Something about how it'll be fine, how love conquers all, that kind of thing. She smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Something easier than the truth. The truth is, I'm not good at this, Noah admitted. I'm not good at chasing people or saying the right thing or knowing when to push and when to back off. But I know I don't want to walk away. So if you need space sometimes, tell me. If you need me to show up, tell me that too. Just don't disappear without a word because that... He stopped, swallowing hard. That's the only thing I can't handle. Eva was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face like she was trying to memorize every detail. Then slowly she reached over and took his hand, her fingers threading through his in a grip that felt like an anchor. Okay, she whispered. I can do that. Yeah. She squeezed his hand once, firm and sure. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I made you doubt this. I got scared. Scared of what? Of this being real. Her voice wavered, but she didn't look away. Of letting myself believe that someone could see me, all of me, and still choose to stay. Because if I believe it, and then you leave, I don't know if I'll survive it. Noah's throat tightened. He'd felt that way before, after his father died, after the world had proven itself capable of taking away the things he loved most. He understood fear like that, the kind that made you build walls just to keep yourself from falling apart. I can't promise I'll be perfect, he said quietly. But I can promise I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to go. Eva's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away and smiled, genuinely smiled, the kind of smile that felt like sunrise. That's the best promise anyone's ever made me. They sat there for a long time, hands clasped, watching the light shift across the water. And when Eva finally spoke again, her voice was steadier, lighter. So what now? She asked. Now we figure it out as we go. Noah looked at her, feeling something settle in his chest, something that felt like belonging. Starting with next Saturday, same time, same place. You sure you want to keep doing this? I'm sure. Eva leaned her head against his shoulder, and Noah felt the weight of her trust like a gift he hadn't known he needed. Okay then, next Saturday. But you're bringing scones this time. The lemon ones from that bakery on Division. Deal. The following Saturday arrived wrapped in rain, the kind of steady drizzle that turned Portland into a watercolor painting. Noah showed up at the park anyway, scones in hand and his jacket soaked through, and found Eva waiting under the shelter of a covered pavilion near the pond. You're insane, she said, laughing as he jogged over. It's pouring. You said Saturday. You didn't say the weather had to cooperate. He handed her the bag of scones and shook the rain from his hair like a dog. Besides, I've worked in worse. Framing carpenter logic. Eva opened the bag and pulled out a scone, breaking off a piece and popping it into her mouth. Oh my God, these are perfect. Told you. They ate in comfortable silence, the rain drumming on the pavilion roof above them, the air smelling like wet earth and fresh bread. Noah watched Eva out of the corner of his eye, the way she savored each bite, the way her shoulders had relaxed since he'd arrived. It felt like a small victory, proof that they were figuring this out one Saturday at a time. Can I ask you something? Eva said after a while, brushing crumbs from her lap. Sure. Why'd you agree to the blind date in the first place? Marcus said you hadn't been on one in months. Noah shifted, uncomfortable under the weight of the question. I don't know. I guess I got tired of coming home to an empty apartment every night. That's honest. You asked. Eva smiled, but there was something thoughtful in her expression. What happened? To make you stop dating, I mean. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Noah was quiet for a long moment, debating how much to share. But Eva had been honest with him about her scars, her fears. He owed her the same. My dad died 3 years ago, he said finally. Heart attack. He was 56, healthy as far as we knew, and then one day he just wasn't there anymore. After that, I kind of shut down. Threw myself into work, stopped seeing friends, stopped trying to meet people. It was easier that way. Easier than what? than caring about someone and risking losing them again. Eva's hand found his, her grip warm and grounding. I get that, more than you know. Yeah? Yeah. She looked out at the rain, her voice soft but steady. After the accident, I spent a year convinced I'd never have a normal relationship, that no one would want to deal with the chair, the limitations, all of it. So I stopped trying, stopped putting myself out there. It felt safer to be alone than to be rejected. But you agreed to the blind date. Because Jenna wouldn't shut up about it. Eva laughed, but there was a hint of something raw beneath it. And because I was tired of being safe, tired of living like I was already dead. Noah squeezed her hand. I'm glad you said yes. Me too. She turned to look at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes took his breath away. You make me feel like I'm not just the girl in the wheelchair, like I'm Eva. That's all I've ever seen, Noah said simply. They stayed under the pavilion until the rain eased into mist, talking about everything and nothing, favorite movies, worst childhood haircuts, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. And when they finally left, Noah felt lighter than he had in years, like something heavy had been lifted from his shoulders. Over the next month, their Saturdays evolved into something more. They added coffee shops to the rotation, long drives through the gorge with the windows down, and music playing softly, quiet evenings at Eva's apartment where she'd draw and Noah would read or just watch her work. He learned that she was messy in the best way, her apartment scattered with sketchbooks and half-finished drawings, mugs of cold tea on every surface, a chaos that felt lived in and real. He also learned that she had bad days. The first one caught him off guard. He'd shown up at her apartment on a Tuesday evening, she'd texted him to come over, and found her still in bed, the curtains drawn, the room dim and heavy with silence. Hey, he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. You okay? No. Her voice was muffled by the pillow. I'm having a bad day. What does that mean? It means everything hurts and I'm tired and I don't want to do anything except lie here and feel sorry for myself. She turned her head to look at him and her eyes were dull, exhausted. You can go if you want. I'm not good company right now. Noah didn't move. Do you want me to go? I don't know what I want. Then I'm staying. He kicked off his shoes and lay down beside her, careful not to crowd her but close enough that she could feel his presence. You don't have to talk. You don't have to do anything. I'm just here. Eva was quiet for a long time, and Noah thought maybe she'd fallen asleep. But then her hand found his, fingers curling around his palm, and she whispered, Thank you. They stayed like that for hours, just lying there, the room dark and still, the world outside carrying on without them. And when Eva finally fell asleep, Noah stayed awake, listening to the sound of her breathing and thinking about what it meant to love someone not in spite of their struggles, but because of their courage to keep going anyway. By late spring, they had fallen into a rhythm that felt less like dating and more like living. Noah had a drawer at Eva's apartment, t-shirts and a toothbrush and a pair of jeans he kept forgetting to take home. Eva had started texting him in the middle of the day, random thoughts and bad jokes and pictures of whatever she was drawing. They didn't talk about labels or what they were to each other. They just existed together, and that felt like enough. Then one Saturday, Eva handed him a key. They were sitting at her kitchen table, eating takeout Thai food straight from the containers, when she slid a small silver key across the table. What's this? Noah asked, setting down his fork. A key to my apartment. Eva's voice was casual, but her eyes betrayed her nerves. So you don't have to knock every time you come over. Noah stared at the key for a long moment, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. You sure about this? Would I give it to you if I wasn't? She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, trying to look nonchalant. It's not a big deal, just a key. It feels like a big deal. Okay, fine, it's a big deal. Eva's expression softened and she reached across the table to touch his hand. But it's the right kind of big deal. I want you to have it. I want you to be able to come and go like, this is your space too. Noah picked up the key, the metal cool and smooth in his palm. You know what this means, right? What? It means you're stuck with me now. Eva grinned. I think I can live with that. Noah slipped the key onto his key ring right next to his truck key and his apartment key and felt something shift inside him, a sense of permanence he hadn't known he'd been craving. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For trusting me enough to give me this." Eva's eyes shimmered, but she blinked the emotion away and picked up her fork. "Don't make it weird, Price. Just use the key and stop knocking like a stranger." "Yes, ma'am." They finished their dinner in easy silence, and when Noah left that night, he used the key to lock the door behind him. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a promise, proof that he wasn't just passing through her life. He was building something here, something that mattered. Summer arrived with the kind of heat that made Portland feel like a different city, slower, softer, heavy, with the scent of sunscreen and barbecue smoke. Noah and Eva spent their Saturdays at the park, their bench now claimed by routine and habit, and Noah found himself looking forward to those mornings more than anything else in his week. One particularly warm Saturday in July, they sat side by side with iced coffees and a bag of donuts from the place on Belmont that Eva swore by. She was sketching a heron that had landed near the edge of the pond, her left hand moving in quick, confident strokes, and Noah watched her with the kind of quiet contentment that felt like home. "You're staring," Eva said without looking up. "I'm admiring." "That's just a fancy word for staring," Noah smiled. "Fine. I'm staring." Eva glanced at him, her lips quirking into a smile. "Why?" "Because you look happy." "I am happy." She set down her pencil and turned to face him fully. "Happier than I've been in a long time." "Me too." They sat in the warmth of that admission for a moment, the air between them thick with unspoken things. Then Eva took a breath, like she was gathering courage, and said, "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I deleted a bunch of my drawings last week." Her voice was steady, but Noah could hear the tremor beneath it. "Not the client work, just the personal stuff. Sketches I'd been working on for months. I looked at them and thought they weren't good enough, and I panicked." Noah's chest tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was embarrassed." She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together. "Because it felt stupid to be upset over something so small when there are bigger things to worry about. But the truth is those drawings mattered to me, and now they're gone, and I can't get them back." "Eva, I'm telling you this because I don't want to hide the hard parts from you," she continued, her voice stronger now. "I don't want you to think I'm okay all the time just because I smile and make jokes. Sometimes I'm not okay. Sometimes I do things that don't make sense, and I need to know that's allowed." Noah reached over and took her hand, holding it like it was the most important thing in the world. "It's allowed, all of it. The good days, the bad days, the days when you delete your drawings and regret it later. I'm not going anywhere." Eva's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "Promise?" "I promise." She leaned into him then, her head resting against his shoulder, and Noah wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. The heron took flight from the edge of the pond, its wings cutting through the still air, and Noah thought about how some things were worth the risk, worth the fear, worth the possibility of loss, because the alternative was a life half-lived, safe but empty. "I'm sorry I deleted them," Eva whispered. "I know. I wish I could get them back." "Then we'll make new ones." Noah pressed a kiss to the top of her head, gentle and sure. "Better ones." Eva pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes still wet but brighter now. "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." She smiled, small and fragile but real, and Noah felt the weight of her trust settle over him like a benediction. The weeks that followed were some of the best Noah had ever known. They fell into a pattern that felt less like routine and more like ritual. Saturday mornings at the park, weeknight dinners at each other's apartments, stolen afternoons when Noah finished work early and showed up at Eva's door with coffee and bad puns. She started keeping his favorite beer in her fridge, and he started learning how to cook the meals she loved: stir-fry with too much garlic, grilled cheese with tomato soup, pancakes on Sunday mornings when they had nowhere to be. They didn't talk about the future. They didn't need to. The present felt full enough, rich with the kind of intimacy that came from showing up day after day, even when it was hard. But there were still moments when the weight of the world pressed in, like the day they went to the farmer's market downtown and a little girl pointed at Eva's wheelchair and asked her mother in a loud, piercing voice, "What's wrong with that lady?" The mother had shushed her quickly, embarrassed, but the damage was done. Eva's face had gone blank, her smile frozen in place, and Noah had felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the helpless anger at a world that couldn't see past the surface. They'd left the market early, walking in silence back to the truck, and it wasn't until they were sitting in the cab with the doors closed that Eva finally spoke. "I hate that it still gets to me," she said quietly. "I should be used to it by now." "You don't have to be used to it." Noah reached over and took her hand. "It's okay to be angry." "I'm not angry." She looked at him, and her eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "I'm just tired. Tired of being the person everyone has questions about. Tired of having to educate strangers just for existing." "Then don't," Noah said simply. "You don't owe anyone an explanation." "I know that in my head, but my heart—" She pressed a hand to her chest, her voice breaking. "My heart still wants people to see me as normal, and I know that's impossible, but I can't stop wanting it." Noah pulled her into his arms, holding her as tightly as he dared, and felt the weight of her grief settle between them. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just held her, and when she finally pulled back, her eyes were dry, but her grip on his hand was iron. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not trying to make it better." She smiled, sad but sincere. "For just letting it be hard." Noah kissed her forehead, soft and lingering. "Always." By the time August rolled around, they'd been together for nearly 5 months, though neither of them had ever officially called it that. They still didn't use words like boyfriend or girlfriend, didn't talk about anniversaries or milestones. But one evening, sitting on Eva's couch with takeout containers spread across the coffee table and a true crime documentary playing on the TV, Eva turned to him and said, "Is this weird?" Noah frowned. "Is what weird?" "This. Us. The fact that we've been doing this for months and we've never actually defined what we are." Noah thought about it, then shrugged. "Does it need to be defined?" "I don't know, maybe?" Eva set down her chopsticks and turned to face him fully. Sometimes I wonder if we're on the same page, like, am I your girlfriend? Are you my boyfriend? Or are we just two people who really like spending time together?" "What do you want us to be?" Noah asked carefully. Eva was quiet for a moment, her eyes searching his face. "I want us to be real. I want to know that when I introduce you to people, I can call you my boyfriend without it being presumptuous. I want to know that this isn't just, I don't know, temporary." Noah set down his own food and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Eva, you gave me a key to your apartment. You let me see you on your worst days. You trust me with things you don't trust anyone else with. If that's not real, I don't know what is. So we're together?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Like, officially?" "Yeah." Noah smiled, and it felt like the easiest thing in the world. "We're together. Officially." Eva's face lit up, and she launched herself at him, nearly knocking them both off the couch in her enthusiasm. Noah caught her, laughing, and held her close as she buried her face in his neck. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting for you to say that," she mumbled against his skin. "You could have just asked." "I didn't want to seem needy." "You're not needy." Noah pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands framing her face. "You're careful. There's a difference." Eva's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she was smiling now, wide and unguarded. "I really like you, Noah Price." "I really like you too, Evelyn." They kissed then, slow and sweet and full of all the things they hadn't said yet but would, eventually, when the time was right. And when they finally pulled apart, the documentary still playing in the background and the takeout going cold on the table, Noah felt like he'd finally found the thing he'd been searching for without knowing it. Not perfection, not easy, just real. The weeks that followed their conversation felt different. Not dramatically so, but in the quiet, significant ways that marked real change. Noah started referring to Eva as his girlfriend without the hesitation that had lingered before, and Eva stopped second-guessing whether she was allowed to need him. They'd crossed some invisible threshold, and on the other side was a kind of certainty that made everything else feel lighter. But certainty, Noah was learning, didn't mean easy. It was a Thursday evening in mid-September when Eva called him at work, her voice tight in a way that made his stomach drop. "Can you come over?" she asked, skipping any greeting. I just need you here." Noah was in the middle of measuring joists for a second-story addition, but he set down his tape measure without a second thought. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Thank you," she whispered, and then the line went dead. Noah made it in 15, his truck skidding slightly on the wet pavement as he pulled into her building's parking lot. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs, and let himself in with the key she'd given him months ago. He found her in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with her wheelchair beside her and her sketchbook open on her lap. She wasn't drawing. She was just staring at a blank page, her left hand gripping the pencil so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Hey," Noah said softly, crossing the room to sit beside her. "What's going on?" Eva didn't look at him. "I had a doctor's appointment today. Follow-up from the accident. They do them every 6 months to check nerve function, range of motion, all that fun stuff." "Okay." Noah kept his voice calm, steady. "How'd it go?" "They said I'm doing great, better than expected, actually. The therapist said I've adapted remarkably well, and the neurologist said my function is stable." She finally looked at him, and her eyes were hollow. And all I could think was, this is it. This is as good as it gets, and I should be grateful, right? I should be happy that it's not worse. "But you're not," Noah said quietly. "No." Her voice cracked. "I'm not. Because stable means I'm never getting better. It means this is my life now. The chair, the limited hand function, all of it. Forever. And I know I should have accepted that by now, but I haven't. I keep waiting for some miracle, some breakthrough treatment, something that'll make me whole again. And today they basically told me to stop waiting." Noah's chest ached. He wanted to fix it, to say something that would take away her pain, but he knew there were no words for this kind of grief, the kind that came from mourning a version of yourself that would never exist again. "I'm sorry," he said, because it was the only honest thing he had. "I don't want you to be sorry." Eva set the sketchbook aside and turned to face him, her eyes fierce despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "I want you to tell me it's okay to be angry. I want you to tell me I'm allowed to hate this without it meaning I'm ungrateful or weak. I want—" She stopped, her breath hitching. "I want to know that you're not going to leave when you realize this is never going to get easier." Noah reached for her, pulling her into his arms with a certainty that came from the deepest part of himself. "I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever. And you are allowed to be angry. You're allowed to hate this. You're allowed to grieve the life you thought you'd have. None of that makes you weak." Eva clung to him, her face pressed against his chest, and sobbed, deep, wrenching sounds that tore through the quiet apartment. Noah held her through it, his own eyes burning with tears he wouldn't let fall, and thought about how love wasn't just about the good days. It was about holding someone while they shattered and trusting that they'd find a way to put themselves back together. When Eva finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her eyes were swollen, but there was something lighter in her expression, like she'd been carrying a weight she'd finally been allowed to set down. "I'm a mess," she said, laughing weakly. "You're human." Noah brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And you're allowed to be a mess sometimes. You keep saying that, because you keep needing to hear it." Eva smiled, small and fragile but real. "What did I do to deserve you? You said yes to a blind date with a guy who showed up in work boots." Noah kissed her forehead, soft and lingering. Everything else was just details. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other and the quiet understanding that some days were harder than others, and that was okay. And when Eva finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying, Noah stayed awake beside her, one hand resting on her shoulder like a promise he intended to keep. October arrived with crisp air and the smell of wood smoke, and Noah and Eva celebrated their unofficial 6-month mark by doing absolutely nothing special. They ordered pizza, watched a horror movie that made Eva scream and clutch Noah's arm, and fell asleep on the couch, tangled together like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. It was the kind of ordinary that felt extraordinary, proof that they'd built something real and lasting without needing grand gestures or dramatic declarations. But as comfortable as they'd become, Noah was starting to realize that comfort could be a double-edged sword. It made you forget to pay attention to the small shifts, the tiny fractures that could grow into chasms if left unchecked. The first sign came on a Saturday morning at the park. They were sitting at their bench with coffee and pastries from the bakery on Division, and Eva was quieter than usual, not withdrawn exactly, but distracted, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. Noah noticed but didn't push, figuring she'd talk when she was ready. After 20 minutes of silence, she finally spoke. "Do you ever think about the future?" Noah glanced at her, surprised by the question. "Sometimes? Why?" "I just wonder what it looks like. For us, I mean." She was staring at the pond, her expression unreadable. "We've been together for 6 months, and it's been really good. Better than I thought possible. But we never talk about where this is going. Do we need to?" "I don't know." Eva turned to look at him, and there was something vulnerable in her eyes. "I guess I'm just wondering if you see a future with me. Like, a real one. Or if this is just, I don't know, a nice thing that'll eventually run its course." Noah felt a flicker of panic in his chest, not because he didn't see a future with her, but because he hadn't thought about it in concrete terms. He'd been so focused on the present, on getting through each day and proving he could be the person she needed, that he hadn't let himself imagine what came next. "I see a future," he said carefully. "I just haven't figured out what it looks like yet." "Okay." Eva nodded, but Noah could see the disappointment in her face. "That's fair." "Is that not enough?" Noah asked, his voice sharper than he intended. "I'm here, aren't I? I show up every day. I gave you everything I have to give. What else do you want from me?" Eva flinched, and Noah immediately regretted his tone. But before he could apologize, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I don't want more from you, Noah. I just want to know that we're building towards something instead of just existing in this perpetual present. I need to know that when things get hard, and they will get hard, you're going to stick around because you've decided I'm worth it, not just because you're too polite to leave." "That's not fair," Noah said, his jaw tight. "I've proven I'm not going anywhere." "Have you?" Eva's eyes flashed with something Noah had never seen before. Anger, maybe, or frustration. "Or have you just been doing what's easy? Showing up on Saturdays, staying over a few nights a week, being supportive when I'm sad? That's all great, Noah, but it's not the same as commitment. It's not the same as saying, I choose you no matter what." Noah opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because deep down, he knew she was right. He'd been so focused on proving he wouldn't leave that he hadn't actually committed to staying. There was a difference, and Eva had just named it. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted finally, his voice rough. "I don't know how to promise you forever when I'm still figuring out how to get through today without screwing it up." Eva's expression softened, and she reached for his hand. "I'm not asking for forever right now. I'm just asking you to think about it, to imagine what it could look like, because I can't keep doing this if we're not moving in the same direction. And if I can't give you that answer yet, then I guess we figure it out together." She squeezed his hand, and Noah felt the weight of her words settle over him like a challenge. "But Noah, I need you to actually think about it, not just assume we'll figure it out eventually." Noah nodded, his throat tight. "Okay, I will." They sat in silence for a while longer, the easy comfort of their Saturday mornings replaced by something heavier, more uncertain. And when they finally left the park, Noah felt like they'd crossed another threshold, only this time he wasn't sure what was waiting on the other side. The conversation haunted Noah for days. He went to work, framed walls, measured angles, but his mind kept circling back to Eva's question. What did the future look like? And more importantly, did he want the same things she did? The truth was, Noah had never been good at planning ahead. His whole life had been about surviving one day at a time. After his father died, after relationships fell apart, after the world proved itself capable of taking away the things he loved. Planning for the future felt like tempting fate, like admitting he believed in something permanent when experience had taught him nothing ever was. But Eva deserved better than that. She deserved someone who could look her in the eye and say, "Yes, I see a life with you," and mean it without reservation. On Thursday evening, Noah showed up at Eva's apartment with Thai food and a bottle of wine he'd picked up on the way. She let him in without a word, and they ate in relative silence, the weight of unspoken things pressing down on them like humidity before a storm. Finally, Noah set down his fork and said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about the future." Eva looked up, her expression carefully neutral. And? And I don't have all the answers yet, but I know I want to try. Noah leaned forward, his elbows on the table, and met her eyes. I can't promise I won't mess this up. I can't promise I'll always know the right thing to say or do. But I can promise that I'm choosing you, every day, even when it's hard, even when I don't know what comes next. Eva's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. That's all I needed to hear. Yeah? Yeah. She reached across the table and took his hand, her grip warm and sure. I don't need you to have everything figured out, Noah. I just need to know you're in this with me, that we're figuring it out together. I'm in it, Noah said, and he meant it with every part of himself. I'm all in. Eva smiled then, genuinely smiled, the kind of smile that made Noah's chest ache with something he was starting to recognize as love. Not the easy, surface-level kind, but the deep foundational kind that required work and vulnerability and a willingness to show up even when you didn't have the answers. Good, she said softly, because I'm all in too. The weeks that followed were different, not because anything dramatic had changed, but because they'd named what they were building and committed to seeing it through. Noah started thinking about the future in concrete terms, imagining holidays together and road trips and lazy Sunday mornings that stretched into years instead of moments. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, but it also felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Then November arrived, and with it came Thanksgiving. Eva's mother called on a Tuesday evening, her voice bright and insistent through the speakerphone. "You're coming home for Thanksgiving, right? I'm making that stuffing you love, and your Aunt Karen is bringing her famous pies." Eva shot Noah a panicked look from across the couch, and he had to bite back a smile. "Actually, Mom, I was thinking I might stay here this year." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Stay there? Why?" "Because I have plans." Eva glanced at Noah again, her expression both nervous and hopeful. "With my boyfriend." Another pause, longer this time. "Boyfriend? Since when do you have a boyfriend?" "Since June, technically. His name is Noah, and he's really great, Mom. I want you to meet him." "We'll bring him home for Thanksgiving then. There's always room for one more." Eva's eyes widened, and Noah could see the wheels turning in her mind, calculating risk versus reward, weighing the desire to introduce him to her family against the fear of subjecting him to her mother's interrogation. "What do you think?" Eva asked after she'd hung up, her voice small. "Would you be okay meeting my family? Fair warning, my mom is intense, and my Aunt Karen has no filter, and my little brother will probably try to recruit you for some pyramid scheme he's involved in." Noah laughed. "Sounds terrifying." "It is, but they're my family, and if we're doing this, I want them to know you." Noah thought about it for maybe 3 seconds before nodding. "Okay, let's do it." "Really?" Eva's face lit up with surprise. "You're not going to need time to prepare yourself mentally?" "How much preparation do I need?" "A lot. My mom is going to ask you approximately 700 questions about your job, your intentions, and whether you know how to change a tire. My aunt is going to corner you and give you unsolicited advice about relationships. And my brother, well, Tyler's harmless but exhausting." Noah pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I can handle it." "You say that now." "I mean it." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his expression serious. "I want to meet them, Eva. I want to be part of your life. All of it, not just the easy parts." Eva's eyes shimmered with emotion, but she blinked it away and smiled. "Okay then. Thanksgiving in Eugene. I hope you like chaotic family dinners and aggressive questioning." "Can't wait." Thanksgiving Day arrived with gray skies and a light drizzle that felt quintessentially Oregon. Noah drove them to Eugene in his truck, Eva navigating from the passenger seat and providing running commentary about every landmark they passed. That's the gas station where I got my first speeding ticket, she said, pointing, and that's the coffee shop where I had my first date in high school. He ordered a triple espresso to impress me and then spent the whole afternoon vibrating like a jackhammer. Noah laughed. How'd that work out for him? He threw up in the parking lot. It was very romantic. Setting the bar pretty low for me. That's the idea. They pulled up to Eva's childhood home just before noon, a two-story craftsman with a wide front porch and a ramp that had clearly been added more recently. Noah helped Eva with her wheelchair, then grabbed the pie they'd brought from the back seat, and together they made their way to the front door. Eva's mother answered before they could knock. A petite woman with Eva's dark eyes and a smile that seemed genuinely warm. There you are. Come in, and you must be Noah. Yes, ma'am. It's nice to meet you. Noah offered his hand, but Eva's mother ignored it and pulled him into a hug instead. We're huggers in this family. Get used to it. She released him and stepped back, her eyes scanning him with the kind of maternal scrutiny that made Noah feel like he was being X-rayed. Eva's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope. Mostly. Eva's mother winked, then turned to her daughter. Sweetheart, you look wonderful. Come in. Everyone's already here. The house was warm and loud, filled with the smell of roasting turkey and the sound of competing conversations. Noah was introduced to what felt like a dozen people in quick succession. Eva's Aunt Karen, who immediately asked if he was good with his hands, her Uncle Robert, who wanted to talk about carpentry, and her younger brother Tyler, who tried to sell Noah on some kind of cryptocurrency investment within the first 5 minutes. Tyler, leave him alone, Eva said, swatting her brother's arm. He's been here for 10 seconds. I'm just saying, early adoption is key. No. Tyler grinned and held up his hands in surrender. Fine, but if you change your mind, we won't. Noah found himself smiling despite the chaos. This was Eva's world, messy and loud and overwhelming in the best way, and being welcomed into it felt like a privilege he hadn't fully earned yet. Dinner was exactly as Eva had warned, chaotic and full of overlapping conversations, and more food than any reasonable group of people could consume. Noah fielded questions from every direction, answering honestly about his work, his family, how he and Eva had met. And when Eva's mother asked with pointed casualness whether he had serious intentions regarding her daughter, Noah met her eyes and said simply, Yes, ma'am, very serious. Eva choked on her water, and her Aunt Karen laughed loud enough to shake the chandelier. But Eva's mother just nodded, satisfied, and moved on to interrogating Tyler about his job prospects. After dinner, while everyone else was collapsed in the living room in various states of food coma, Eva pulled Noah out onto the back porch. The rain had stopped, leaving everything damp and glistening, and the air smelled like wet earth and cedar. You survived, Eva said, leaning against him. Barely. Noah wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Your family is intense. I warned you. You did, but I liked them. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. They love you a lot. Yeah. Eva's voice was soft. They do, even when I make it hard for them. What do you mean? I mean, after the accident, I shut them out for a while. I didn't want their pity, didn't want them to see me struggling. My mom would call and I wouldn't answer. Tyler would drive up to Portland, and I'd pretend I wasn't home. It took me a long time to let them back in. Noah tightened his grip on her. But you did. That's what matters. I guess. She tilted her head to look up at him, her eyes searching his face. Thank you for being here, for meeting them. I know it was a lot. It wasn't too much. Noah smiled. Besides, your Aunt Karen told me I have good bone structure, so I'm calling today a win. Eva laughed, bright and genuine, and Noah felt something settle in his chest, a sense of rightness that came from being exactly where he was supposed to be. They drove back to Portland late that evening, both of them full and exhausted and content. Eva fell asleep somewhere around Salem, her head resting against the window, and Noah drove through the dark with the radio playing softly, and his thoughts drifting toward the future he'd been so afraid to imagine. He could see it now. Not perfectly, not with every detail mapped out, but enough to know what he wanted. He wanted more Thanksgivings with Eva's chaotic family, more Saturday mornings at the park, more quiet evenings on the couch where they didn't need to talk to feel connected. He wanted the hard days and the easy days and everything in between. He wanted her. By the time they made it back to Eva's apartment, it was nearly midnight. Noah carried her wheelchair up while she yawned and complained about being too tired to function. And when they finally made it inside, they collapsed onto the couch without bothering to turn on the lights. "Today was good," Eva mumbled, her eyes already closing. "Yeah, it was. My mom likes you." "How can you tell?" "She only hugs people she likes, and she gave you 2 pieces of pie." Eva smiled without opening her eyes. "That's basically a marriage proposal in her book." Noah laughed softly. "Good to know." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the apartment dark and still around them. Then Eva spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Noah?" "Yeah?" "I think I'm falling in love with you." Noah's breath caught. He'd known it for a while now, had felt it in the way his chest tightened when she smiled, the way every moment without her felt incomplete. But hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way nothing else had. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," he said quietly. Eva opened her eyes and looked at him, and in the dim light from the street lamp outside, Noah could see tears shining on her cheeks. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" she whispered. "Yeah." Noah cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away her tears. "We really are." They kissed then, slow and deep and full of promises neither of them had the words for yet. And when they finally pulled apart, Noah felt like he'd just stepped off a cliff and discovered he could fly. The confession changed everything and nothing at the same time. They didn't suddenly become different people or start acting like characters in a romance movie. They still had their Saturday mornings at the park, still ordered too much takeout on weeknights, still bickered about whose turn it was to do the dishes. But underneath it all was a new foundation, solid and unshakable, built on words that had finally been spoken out loud. December came fast, bringing with it the kind of cold that made Portland feel like a different city, sharper, cleaner, the air smelling like rain and wood smoke. Noah started spending more nights at Eva's apartment than his own, and one morning over coffee, Eva looked at him across the kitchen table and said, "You know you basically live here now, right?" Noah glanced around the apartment, at his jacket hanging by the door, his boots lined up next to her wheelchair, the stack of his books on the coffee table. "I guess I do. So maybe we should make it official." Eva's voice was casual, but Noah could see the nervousness in the way she gripped her mug. "Move in with me. For real." Noah's heart did something complicated in his chest. 6 months ago, the idea of living with someone would have sent him running. But now, sitting across from Eva in the morning light with her hair still messy from sleep and her eyes full of hope, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "You sure about that?" he asked, because he needed to hear her say it. "I'm sure." Eva set down her mug and reached across the table for his hand. "I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to fight about who left the milk out and whose turn it is to take out the trash. I want all the boring, mundane parts of life with you. So yeah, I'm sure." Noah squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of what she was offering. Not just space in her apartment, but space in her life, permanently and without reservation. "Okay, let's do it." Eva's face broke into the kind of smile that made Noah's chest ache. "Really?" "Really. But I'm keeping my truck parked out front. Non-negotiable." "Deal." She laughed, bright and unguarded. "Oh my God, we're doing this. We're actually doing this." They spent the next 2 weeks boxing up Noah's apartment, sorting through years of accumulated stuff and deciding what was worth keeping and what could be donated or thrown away. It was tedious work, made longer by the fact that Eva kept getting distracted by old photos or random objects that sparked stories Noah had never heard before. "Is this your high school yearbook?" she asked one afternoon, holding up a book with a faded blue cover. "Put that down." "Oh, I'm definitely looking at this." She flipped it open, her eyes scanning the pages with gleeful curiosity. "Oh my God, Noah, your hair!" "I was 16. Everyone's hair was terrible in 2015. Yours was especially terrible." She held up a photo of Noah with hair that stuck up in every direction like he'd been electrocuted. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking I wanted to impress a girl named Ashley who sat in front of me in algebra." "Did it work?" "Not even a little bit." Eva laughed so hard she nearly fell out of her wheelchair, and Noah couldn't help but smile despite his embarrassment. This was what he wanted, someone who could find joy in his awkward teenage years, someone who made even the boring parts of life feel significant. By mid-December, Noah had officially moved in. His furniture was integrated with Eva's, his clothes hung in half the closet, his toothbrush sat next to hers in the bathroom. It should have felt strange or overwhelming, but instead it just felt right, like he'd finally found the place he was supposed to be. The first real test came 3 days after he'd unpacked the last box. Noah came home from work to find Eva sitting on the couch in the dark, her wheelchair parked beside her, and her face streaked with tears. His stomach dropped. "What happened?" he asked, crossing the room in 3 long strides. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Her voice was thick with crying. I had a really bad day." Noah sat down beside her, close but not crowding. "Talk to me." Eva took a shaky breath, her hands twisting in her lap. "I had a video call with a new client this morning. Children's book author, really nice lady, seemed excited about working with me. Everything was going great until her kid ran into the room and pointed at the screen and said, 'Mommy, why is that lady in a wheelchair?' And the author, she got this look on her face, like she'd just realized something. And then she said she'd get back to me about the project and hung up." Noah's jaw tightened. "She didn't hire you because of the wheelchair." "She didn't say that, but I know that's why." Eva's voice broke. "And the worst part is, I can't even call her out on it because she'll just say she went with someone else or the budget changed or whatever excuse people use when they don't want to admit they're discriminating. I'm so tired of this, Noah. I'm tired of being qualified and talented and still losing work because people can't see past the chair." Noah pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried against his chest. He wanted to fix it, wanted to call that author and tell her exactly what he thought of her prejudice, but he knew that wouldn't help. All he could do was be here, solid and present, while Eva grieved the unfairness of a world that couldn't see her worth. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You deserve better than this." "I know I do, but knowing it doesn't make it hurt less." They sat like that for a long time, the apartment dark and quiet around them. Eventually, Eva's tears slowed, and she pulled back just enough to look at him. "Thank you for being here," she whispered. "Where else would I be?" "I don't know, but a lot of people wouldn't stick around for this, for all the ugly, hard parts." Noah cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the last of her tears. "I'm not a lot of people, and I'm not going anywhere." Eva closed her eyes and leaned into his touch, and Noah felt the weight of her trust settle over him like a vow. Yet, Christmas arrived with unexpected snow, rare for Portland, but magical when it happened. Noah and Eva spent Christmas Eve at his apartment. He'd kept the lease through the end of the year, wrapping presents and drinking spiked hot chocolate while holiday movies played in the background. It felt easy and comfortable, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. "I got you something," Eva said around 10 o'clock, pulling a small wrapped box from her bag. Noah raised an eyebrow. "We said no gifts." "We said no expensive gifts. This doesn't count." She handed him the box, her expression nervous. "Open it." Noah unwrapped it carefully, revealing a small wooden box with a brass clasp. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a key on a simple leather cord. "It's the key to my apartment," Eva explained. "I mean, you already have a key, but this one's different. It's symbolic. Like, you're not just staying with me temporarily. This is your home now. Our home." Noah's throat tightened. He lifted the key from the box, feeling the weight of it in his palm, and thought about how far they'd come from that first awkward coffee shop date. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I love it." "There's an inscription on the back." Noah flipped the key over and read the words etched into the metal. "Home is wherever you are." He looked up at Eva, and the love in her eyes was so open and unguarded that it took his breath away. "I love you," he said, and it was the easiest thing he'd ever said. "I love you too." Eva smiled, soft and sure. "Merry Christmas, Noah." "Merry Christmas." They kissed then, slow and sweet, and Noah felt like he'd just been given the only gift that mattered. The new year arrived with the kind of hope that felt dangerous, like tempting fate by believing things could stay this good. But Noah was learning that hope wasn't about believing everything would be perfect. It was about believing you could handle whatever came next, as long as you weren't facing it alone. January brought rain, as it always did in Portland, and with it came a conversation Noah had been avoiding. They were sitting on the couch one evening, Eva sketching and Noah reading, when she set down her pencil and said, "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever think about having kids?" Noah looked up from his book, surprised. "Where's this coming from?" "My brother's girlfriend is pregnant. They announced it at dinner last week." Eva's expression was carefully neutral. "And it just got me thinking about what I want. What we want." Noah set his book aside, buying himself time to think. "I haven't thought about it much, honestly. After my dad died, I kind of stopped planning that far ahead." "But if you did think about it," Eva pressed gently, "would you want them? Kids, I mean." Noah considered it, really considered it. "I think so. Maybe. Someday." He looked at her, trying to read her expression. "What about you?" Eva was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on her sketchbook. "I used to think I did. Before the accident, I just assumed I'd have kids eventually, but now—" She stopped, her voice catching. "Now, I don't know if I can. Physically, I mean. The doctor said it's possible, but it would be high risk, and even if I could, I don't know if I'd be a good mother. How do you parent from a wheelchair? How do you chase after a toddler or carry a crying baby when you can't even—" "Stop," Noah said, his voice firm but gentle. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "You would be an amazing mother. The wheelchair doesn't change that." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. You're creative and patient and funny and loving. You see the world in ways most people never will, and you teach a kid to see it that way too. The wheelchair is it's just logistics. We'd figure it out." Eva's eyes filled with tears. "You really believe that?" "I know it." Noah squeezed her hands. "But we don't have to decide anything right now. We're 25. We have time." "Okay." Eva nodded, wiping at her eyes. "Okay. I needed to know you'd thought about it, that it was something you might want." "It is." Noah pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "With you, everything is something I might want." February brought Eva's birthday, and Noah spent 2 weeks planning the perfect surprise. He'd never been good at grand romantic gestures, but Eva deserved something special, something that showed her how much she meant to him. On the morning of her birthday, he woke her up early with coffee and a pastry from her favorite bakery, then told her to get dressed because they were going somewhere. "Where?" Eva asked, eyeing him suspiciously. "It's a surprise. I hate surprises." "You'll like this one." He drove them to the coast, a 2-hour trip through winding roads and towering trees, and Eva spent most of the drive trying to guess where they were going. When they finally arrived at Cannon Beach, the sun was just starting to burn through the morning fog, and the ocean stretched out in front of them like a promise. "We're going to the beach?" Eva asked, and Noah could hear the confusion in her voice. "Not just any beach." Noah parked and came around to help her with her wheelchair, then led her down a paved path toward the sand. "There's something I want to show you." The path ended at a wooden platform that overlooked the beach, accessible and sturdy, with a view of Haystack Rock rising from the water like a monument. Noah had found it weeks ago while researching accessible beaches, and he'd known immediately it was perfect. "Oh my God," Eva breathed, staring out at the ocean. "Noah, this is—" "Wait, there's more." He pulled a blanket from his backpack and spread it on the platform, then unpacked a thermos of hot chocolate and a container of cinnamon rolls. "Birthday breakfast with a view." Eva turned to look at him, and her eyes were shining with tears. "You planned all this?" "I wanted to give you something special, something that was just ours." Noah sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Happy birthday, Eva." She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head on his shoulder and watched the waves roll in, and Noah felt like he'd finally gotten something right. They spent hours on that platform, talking and laughing and watching the tide change. Eva sketched Haystack Rock from 3 different angles, and Noah took photos of her working, wanting to remember the way the wind played with her hair and the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating. As the sun started to dip toward the horizon, Eva set down her sketchbook and turned to face him. This is the best birthday I've ever had, she said quietly. Yeah? Yeah. She took his hand, threading their fingers together. Thank you for seeing me, Noah. Not just the parts I show everyone else, but all of me, even the broken parts. You're not broken, Noah said firmly. You're human, and you're perfect exactly as you are. Eva kissed him then, soft and lingering, and Noah tasted salt from the ocean spray and sweetness from the cinnamon rolls and something else. Something that felt like forever. March brought the kind of rain that made you question why anyone chose to live in the Pacific Northwest, and with it came a shift in Eva's work. She'd been picked up by a major publishing house for a 3-book deal, illustrating a series about a young girl who solved mysteries with her service dog. The advance was generous, the timeline was tight, and Eva threw herself into the work with a focus Noah had never seen before. He was proud of her, fiercely, protectively proud, but he also started to feel her absence in small ways. She worked late into the night, her desk lamp still glowing when he went to bed. She forgot to eat lunch, forgot to answer texts, forgot that the world existed outside of her art. Noah didn't complain. He understood what it meant to be consumed by work, to lose yourself in something that mattered. But 3 weeks into the project, he came home to find Eva still at her desk at 8 o'clock, her eyes red from staring at the screen and her left hand cramping from holding the stylus. Eva, he said gently, you need to take a break. I can't. I have to finish this scene tonight. You said that last night and the night before. This is important, Noah. She didn't look away from the screen. This is my career. I can't just stop because I'm tired. I'm not asking you to stop. I'm asking you to take care of yourself. He moved closer, putting a hand on her shoulder. When's the last time you ate? Eva frowned, thinking. Lunch. It's 8 o'clock. That was 7 hours ago. I'll eat later. Eva, Noah, please. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were frantic, desperate. I need to do this. I need to prove I can handle it. If I screw this up, if I miss the deadline, they might not hire me again. And I can't. I can't afford to lose this opportunity. Noah saw it then, the fear underneath the determination. Eva wasn't just working hard. She was trying to prove she was worth investing in, trying to show the world that her disability didn't make her less capable. And Noah understood that, understood the weight of needing to be twice as good just to be seen as equal. Okay, he said quietly, but I'm making you dinner, and you're going to eat it, and then you can go back to work. Eva's expression softened. Thank you. Noah made pasta with garlic bread, simple but filling, and brought it to her desk on a tray. They ate together in comfortable silence, Eva's eyes never leaving her screen but her hand occasionally reaching out to squeeze his. When she finished eating, she set down her fork and looked at him, really looked at him, and said, I'm sorry I've been so absent lately. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. You moved in with me, and I've barely been present. She reached for his hand. I know this is hard, and I know I'm not making it easy. This is your dream, Noah said simply. I'm not going to make you feel guilty for chasing it. Eva's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. I love you. I love you too. Now finish your scene so we can go to bed. She smiled, and Noah felt like he'd just won something important. April brought cherry blossoms and the kind of weather that made you remember why you lived in Portland despite the 9 months of rain. Eva finished her first book illustration, submitted it on time, and received glowing feedback from her editor. She celebrated by sleeping for 12 hours straight, and when she finally woke up, Noah was there with coffee and waffles and a plan to spend the entire day doing absolutely nothing. They lounged on the couch, watched bad reality TV, and ordered pizza for dinner even though it was barely 5 o'clock. It was perfect in its laziness, proof that they could exist together in the mundane moments just as easily as the significant ones. That evening, as they were cleaning up pizza boxes and debating whether to start another episode, Eva's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my mom. Give me a second. She answered the call, putting it on speaker. Hey, Mom, what's up? Sweetheart, I have some news. Her mother's voice was careful, measured. Your Aunt Karen is sick. She's been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, stage 3. Eva went very still, and Noah watched the color drain from her face. What? When? She found out last week. She didn't want to tell anyone until she'd talked to the doctors about treatment options. Her mother's voice cracked. She starts chemo next month. It's going to be hard. I need to see her, Eva said immediately. I'll come down this weekend. She'd like that. We all would. After Eva hung up, she sat frozen on the couch, staring at nothing. Noah moved closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. She's going to die. Eva's voice was flat, emotionless. They don't say that, but I know. Stage 3 ovarian cancer. The survival rate is terrible. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Eva turned to look at him, and her eyes were empty in a way that scared him. She's the one who stayed with me in the hospital after the accident. When my mom had to go back to work and my brother was useless, Karen was there. She helped me learn how to transfer into the wheelchair. She sat with me while I cried about everything I'd lost. And now she's dying, and there's nothing I can do about it. Noah held her while she fell apart, her tears soaking through his shirt, her body shaking with the kind of grief that had no outlet. And when she finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying, Noah stayed awake and thought about how unfair the world could be, how it took and never seemed to give back enough to balance the scales. They drove to Eugene that Saturday, the landscape blurring past in shades of green and gray. Eva was quiet the entire trip, staring out the window with an expression Noah couldn't quite read. Grief mixed with something harder, something that looked like resignation. He wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the weight pressing down on her shoulders, but he knew there were no words for this kind of pain. Karen lived in a small house on the east side of town, painted yellow with white trim, and a garden that had clearly been tended with love. Eva's mother met them at the door, her eyes red-rimmed, but her smile warm. She's resting in the living room, her mother said quietly. The first round of chemo hit her pretty hard. Eva nodded and wheeled herself inside, Noah following close behind. Karen was sitting in a recliner by the window, a blanket over her lap and a scarf wrapped around her head, where her hair had already started to thin. But when she saw Eva, her face lit up with the kind of joy that made Noah's chest ache. There's my girl, Karen said, her voice hoarse but strong. Come here and give me a hug. Eva crossed the room and leaned in carefully, wrapping her arms around her aunt with a gentleness that spoke to how fragile Karen had become. I'm so sorry, Aunt Karen. I should have been here sooner. Don't you dare apologize. You're here now, and that's what matters. Karen pulled back and looked at Noah, her eyes sharp despite her illness. And you must be the famous Noah I've heard so much about. Yes, ma'am. It's good to see you again. Good to see you too, handsome. You taking care of my girl? Doing my best. That's all anyone can ask. Karen patted Eva's hand, her expression softening. Sit with me for a while. Tell me what you've been up to. I want to hear everything. They spent the afternoon talking, Eva sharing stories about her illustration work and the apartment she and Noah now shared. Karen listened with rapt attention, asking questions and offering commentary that was by turns insightful and hilarious. She didn't talk about the cancer unless someone else brought it up, and even then she brushed it aside with the kind of matter-of-factness that made Noah respect her even more. As the sun started to dip toward the horizon, Karen's energy began to fade. Her eyes grew heavy, her responses slower, and Eva's mother gently suggested they let her rest. Come back tomorrow, Karen said as Eva prepared to leave. I want to hear more about this illustration project. And Noah, you bring that charming smile back with you. Yes, ma'am. In the car on the way back to the hotel, Eva's mother had booked for them. Eva finally broke her silence. She's dying, and she's comforting me. That's so Karen, it hurts. Noah reached over and took her hand. She loves you. I know. That's what makes this so hard. Eva's voice cracked. I keep thinking about all the times I didn't call her back, all the visits I put off because I was too busy or too tired, and now I'd give anything for more time. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough? Noah squeezed her hand. It has to be. They spent the night in a hotel room that smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee, lying side by side on a too-firm mattress and listening to the sounds of traffic outside. Noah held Eva while she cried, her grief spilling out in waves that seemed endless, and when she finally fell asleep, he stayed awake and thought about how love meant showing up for the hard parts, even when you didn't have the answers. The next morning, they returned to Karen's house with coffee and pastries from the bakery Eva's mother had recommended. Karen was sitting up in bed, looking more alert than she had the day before, and when she saw the pastries, she laughed. "You remembered my weakness, lemon scones. Come here, both of you." They spent the day playing cards and watching old movies, and by the time they left that evening, Eva seemed lighter somehow, like she'd found a way to hold her grief without being crushed by it. On the drive back to Portland, Eva turned to Noah and said, "Thank you for coming with me. I couldn't have done this alone." "You're not alone. You never have to do this alone." Eva leaned over and kissed his cheek, soft and lingering. "I know, and that's everything." May brought warmth and longer days, and with them came a routine that felt almost normal. Eva visited Karen every other weekend, sometimes with Noah and sometimes alone, and slowly learned to navigate the reality of loving someone who was dying. The treatments were brutal. Karen lost more weight, her energy flagged, her vibrant personality dulled by pain and medication, but she fought with a determination that inspired everyone around her, and Eva drew strength from that fight, even as it broke her heart. Noah learned to be what Eva needed in those weeks, sometimes a shoulder to cry on, sometimes a distraction, sometimes just a presence in the room when words felt inadequate. He started cooking meals Eva could take to Karen, soups and casseroles that were easy to digest, and full of the kind of comfort that only food could provide. And on the weekends, when Eva couldn't make the trip to Eugene, he'd sit with her while she called Karen on video chat, holding her hand when the conversations got hard. One Saturday in late May, they returned to their bench at the park for the first time in weeks. The pond was alive with ducks and geese, and the trees had filled out with leaves that cast dappled shadows across the water. Eva brought her sketchbook but didn't open it, just sat staring at the view like she was trying to memorize every detail. "I've been thinking," she said after a long silence. "About what?" "About what I want. What we want. For the future." She turned to look at him, her expression serious. "I don't want to wait anymore, Noah. I don't want to put off the important things because we're scared or because we think we have all the time in the world. Karen's illness, it's shown me that we don't. Time isn't guaranteed." Noah's heart started beating faster. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to build a life with you. Not someday, not eventually. Now. I want to talk about marriage and kids and where we're going to be in 5 years. I want to make plans and actually follow through on them." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. "Is that too much too fast?" Noah thought about it for maybe 2 seconds before shaking his head. "No, it's not too much." "Really? Really?" He took both her hands in his, holding them tight. "I want those things too. I've wanted them for a while now, I just didn't know how to say it. But you're right, we don't have time to waste being scared. So let's do it. Let's make plans." Eva's face broke into a smile that was equal parts relief and joy. "Okay, so where do we start? How about with this?" Noah pulled her closer, his voice dropping to something softer, more vulnerable. "Eva Lane, I love you. I want to marry you someday. I want to build a home with you and maybe have kids if that's what we decide. I want to grow old with you and complain about joint pain and bad TV shows. I want all of it." Eva's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. "I want all of that too, every single bit of it." They kissed then, right there on the bench by the pond, and Noah felt like he'd just made the most important promise of his life. June arrived with the kind of heat that made you remember Portland had actual summers, and with it came Karen's last good week. Eva spent every day at her aunt's house, helping where she could and just being present for the rest. Noah took time off work to drive her down, sitting in Karen's living room and listening to stories about Eva's childhood while Karen drifted in and out of consciousness. On Thursday evening, Karen called Eva to her bedside. Her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper, but her eyes were clear and focused. "I need to tell you something," Karen said, her hand gripping Eva's with surprising strength. "What is it?" Eva leaned closer, her heart hammering. "You're going to be okay. After I'm gone, you're going to grieve and it's going to hurt like hell, but you're going to be okay." Karen's eyes moved to Noah, who was standing in the doorway. And you take care of her. Not because she needs taking care of, but because love means showing up even when it's hard. I will, Noah promised, his voice rough with emotion. Good. Karen turned back to Eva, and her expression softened. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You took something terrible and built a beautiful life anyway. That takes courage most people never find. Eva couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face, and held her aunt's hand until Karen drifted off to sleep. Karen died 2 days later, peacefully and surrounded by family. Eva was there, holding her hand and whispering that it was okay to let go. And when it was over, when the room had gone quiet except for the sound of her mother's crying, Eva sat very still and felt like a part of her had been hollowed out. Noah drove her back to Portland that night, neither of them speaking, and when they got home, Eva went straight to bed and didn't get up for 2 days. Noah stayed with her, bringing food she didn't eat and water she barely touched. And when she finally emerged on the 3rd day, her eyes were hollow, but her spine was straight. I need to work, she said, her voice flat. I need to do something that matters. Noah understood. Grief needed an outlet, and for Eva, that outlet was her art. So he set up her desk with fresh supplies, made sure she had everything she needed, and let her lose herself in the illustrations that had become her lifeline. She worked for 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping, barely eating, pouring all her pain and loss into drawings of a young girl and her service dog solving mysteries. And when she finally finished, when she submitted the completed manuscript to her editor and closed her laptop, she turned to Noah and said, I need to go to the park. They went that Saturday, returning to their bench for the first time since Karen's death. The pond was the same as it had always been, the water still and reflective, the trees leaning over like old friends. Eva sat in silence for a long time, her sketchbook in her lap but unopened, and Noah just sat beside her, his presence steady and unwavering. I don't know how to do this, Eva said finally, her voice small. I don't know how to exist in a world without her. You just do, one day at a time. Noah reached for her hand, and I'll be here for every single one of those days. Eva looked at him, and in her eyes was a grief so profound it took his breath away. But underneath it was something else, something that looked like gratitude, like love, like the beginning of healing. Promise? She whispered. I promise. They sat there until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. And when they finally left, Eva stopped at the edge of the path and looked back at the bench. She would have liked that we have this place, Eva said quietly, that we built something here. She would have loved it, Noah agreed. Eva nodded once, then turned and wheeled herself toward the parking lot, and Noah followed, knowing that grief was just another part of the story they were writing together. July brought Eva's 26th birthday, and Noah knew better than to plan anything elaborate. Instead, he woke her up with coffee and her favorite lemon scones, then told her to get dressed because they were going somewhere quiet. He drove them to the coast, the same stretch of beach where they'd celebrated her last birthday, and they spent the day on the platform overlooking the ocean. Eva sketched Haystack Rock again, her lines more confident than they'd been a year ago, and Noah watched her work with the kind of contentment that came from knowing exactly where he belonged. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Eva set down her pencil and turned to face him. I've been thinking about what you said, about marriage and kids and the future. Noah's heart skipped. Yeah? Yeah. She took a breath, gathering courage. I think I'm ready. Not right now, but soon. I want to marry you, Noah. I want to build a life that's ours, not just something we talk about, but something we actually do. Noah felt something shift in his chest, a settling, a rightness that went bone deep. Me too. So we're really doing this? We're really doing this. Noah pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. But first I want to do something. What? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Eva's eyes went wide. Noah? I know we said not right now, but I bought this 2 months ago, and I've been carrying it around waiting for the right moment. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver band with a small diamond. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just asking if you'll wear this as a promise that we're going to get there. that we're building towards something real. Eva stared at the ring, her eyes filling with tears. Are you serious? Completely. Yes. She laughed, bright and watery. Yes, absolutely yes. Noah slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her, like everything in their lives had been leading to this exact moment. They kissed as the sun set over the ocean, and Noah felt like he'd just been handed the future he'd been too afraid to imagine. August brought changes that felt inevitable and right. Eva finished her second book in the illustration series, and the publisher was so impressed they offered her a contract for 3 more. Noah got a promotion at work, a chance to lead his own crew on a major residential project. They started looking at houses, talking seriously about where they wanted to put down roots. But more than any of that, they continued showing up for each other in the small, unglamorous ways that mattered most. Saturday mornings at the park became sacred again, a ritual that grounded them no matter what else was happening. They cooked dinners together, argued about whose turn it was to do laundry, fell asleep tangled together on the couch, while bad TV played in the background. One particularly warm Saturday in late August, they were sitting at their bench when Eva pulled out her sketchbook and flipped to a fresh page. I want to draw something, she said, something for us, something that captures what this place means. Noah watched as she worked, her left hand moving across the page with the kind of confidence that came from years of practice and recent grief transformed into art. She drew the bench, the pond, the willow tree leaning over the water. But she also drew 2 figures, one in a wheelchair, one sitting beside her, their hands clasped and their profiles turned toward each other. When she finished, she showed it to Noah, and his throat tightened. That's us, he said quietly. That's us, Eva agreed, exactly as we are. Not perfect, not fixed, just present, just real. Noah took the sketchbook from her hands and studied the drawing, memorizing every line and shadow. Can I keep this? It's ours, both of ours. Eva leaned her head on his shoulder. Everything from here on out is ours. They sat in silence for a while, watching the light shift across the water and feeling the weight of all they'd been through together. The awkward first date, the concerts and coffee shops, the grief and the joy and everything in between. And Noah realized that this was what love looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, but this. 2 people choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hints of fall color in the trees. Eva and Noah started making concrete plans for their wedding. Nothing elaborate, just a small ceremony at the park with their families and closest friends. They picked a date in the spring, gave themselves time to save money and plan properly, and in the meantime continued building the life they'd promised each other. One evening in mid-September, they were sitting on their couch reviewing venue options when Eva's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, then went very still. What is it? Noah asked. It's an email from my editor. The first book in the series just hit the New York Times bestseller list. Her voice was stunned, disbelieving. Noah, I'm a best-selling illustrator. Noah felt a surge of pride so fierce it nearly knocked him sideways. That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I can't believe it. Eva stared at her phone, tears welling in her eyes. After everything, after the accident, after all the times people told me I couldn't do this, I actually did it. Noah pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. You did it because you're talented and determined, and you never gave up. This is just the beginning, Eva. She pulled back to look at him, and her smile was radiant. Aunt Karen would have been so proud. She would have been over the moon. They celebrated that night with cheap champagne and takeout Chinese food, toasting to Eva's success and the future they were building together. And when they finally went to bed, exhausted and happy, Noah thought about how far they'd come from that first awkward coffee shop date, how they'd taken something fragile and uncertain and built it into something solid and lasting. October brought Eva's first school visit as a published illustrator. She'd been invited to speak to a group of elementary school students about her work, and she was terrified. What if they ask about the wheelchair? She said the night before, pacing their living room in tight circles. What if they stare or make comments or... Then you handle it the way you always do, Noah interrupted gently. with honesty and grace. And if it gets too hard, you leave. But Eva, he caught her hand, pulling her to a stop. You're going to be amazing. Those kids are going to love you. Eva took a shaky breath. You really think so? I know so. The next day, Noah took the morning off work to drive Eva to the school. He waited in the parking lot, too nervous to leave, but not wanting to crowd her. And when she emerged an hour later, her eyes were red, but her smile was genuine. How'd it go? He asked as she transferred into the passenger seat. It was incredible. Eva's voice was thick with emotion. There was this one little girl, she had a leg brace, and she came up to me after and said she'd never seen someone like her in a book before. And she thanked me for showing her that people like us can do important things. Noah's throat tightened. That's beautiful. It was. Eva wiped at her eyes. I finally understand what Aunt Karen meant when she said I'd built something beautiful out of something terrible. I'm not just surviving, Noah. I'm actually making a difference. Noah reached over and took her hand, squeezing it tight. You always have been. Now, more people get to see it. By the time November rolled around, they'd settled into a rhythm that felt less like a relationship and more like a partnership. They made decisions together, supported each other's dreams, argued about stupid things, and made up quickly. They were planning their wedding, talking about moving into a bigger place before they started thinking about kids, building a future that felt both terrifying and inevitable. On Thanksgiving, they hosted dinner at their apartment for the first time, Eva's family and Noah's mother, who'd driven up from Salem. The kitchen was too small and the dining table wasn't big enough, but somehow they made it work, squeezing everyone in and passing dishes over each other's heads while laughter filled every corner of the space. After dinner, while everyone else was collapsed in the living room in various states of food coma, Eva's mother pulled Noah aside in the kitchen. I want to thank you, she said quietly. Noah frowned. For what? For loving my daughter the way she deserves to be loved. For seeing her as a whole person, not just the chair or the limitations. Her eyes were wet. She's happier than I've seen her since before the accident, and that's because of you. Noah's throat tightened. She makes me happy, too. Happier than I knew I could be. Eva's mother smiled, then pulled him into a hug. Welcome to the family, Noah. Officially. Also, December brought the first real snow of the season, and with it came the anniversary of the day Noah had moved in with Eva. They celebrated quietly, ordering pizza and watching the snow fall outside their window while Christmas lights twinkled from neighboring buildings. Do you ever think about that first date? Eva asked, her head resting on Noah's shoulder. When I told you that you could leave if it was pity. All the time. Do you regret staying? Noah turned to look at her, cupping her face in his hands. Not for a single second. Staying was the best decision I've ever made. Eva's eyes filled with tears. Even with all the hard parts, the grief and the bad days and the public stares, especially because of those things. Because they're part of you, and I love all of you. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're not something I have to get through or tolerate, Eva. You're the person I choose every single day, because loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done. Eva kissed him then, soft and lingering, and Noah felt the weight of every promise they'd made settling over them like a benediction. Spring arrived slowly, bringing with it the date they'd marked on the calendar months ago. Their wedding was small and intimate, held at the park by the pond where they'd built their foundation. Eva wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair, and Noah wore a suit he'd bought specifically for this occasion. Their families stood in a semicircle around them, and when the officiant asked if they had their vows ready, Eva and Noah looked at each other and smiled. I wrote mine down, Eva said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her bouquet, because I wanted to make sure I got it right. She took a breath, her voice steady. Noah, you saw me when everyone else just saw the chair. You chose me when I was convinced no one would. You showed up for the hard days and the good days and every day in between. You didn't try to fix me because you understood I wasn't broken. You just loved me exactly as I am, and that's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Noah's vision blurred with tears. When it was his turn, he spoke from memory, the words coming straight from his heart. Eva, you taught me what it means to be brave. Not the kind of bravery that looks good on the outside, but the quiet kind. The kind that gets you out of bed on bad days and keeps you trying even when the world tells you to give up. You made me believe in futures I was too scared to imagine. You showed me that love isn't about being perfect or easy. It's about choosing each other anyway. And I choose you, today, tomorrow, and every day after that. They exchanged rings, the silver band Eva had been wearing for months, and a matching one for Noah. And when the officiant pronounced them married, they kissed while their families cheered and the pond sparkled in the spring sunlight. After the ceremony, Eva pulled Noah aside to the bench where everything had started. "This is where we figured it out," she said, looking at the water. "This is where we learned how to show up for each other. And we're going to keep showing up," Noah promised, "for the rest of our lives." Eva pulled out her sketchbook one last time, opening it to the drawing she'd made months ago, the two of them sitting at the bench, present and real. She added one final detail, wedding rings on both their hands. "There," she said, showing him the completed image. "That's our story. Not perfect, not without struggle, but ours." Noah looked at the drawing, then at Eva, and felt a certainty so profound it took his breath away. They didn't complete each other. That wasn't what love was. They simply made space for each other to exist, fully and without reservation. They'd built something real out of a blind date neither of them had wanted, something that had survived grief and doubt and the cruel weight of the world's judgment. And now, sitting at the bench where it all began, Noah knew one absolute truth. They would keep building, keep showing up, keep choosing each other through every season that came their way. Because that was what love looked like. Not the fairy tale version, but the real one, messy and imperfect and absolutely worth it. Eva closed her sketchbook and took Noah's hand, and together they walked away from the pond and into the life they'd promised each other. Present, real, and finally, completely theirs.